Shall I start now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Welcome to all joining members and is on behalf of the Committee on Internal Audit Standards Board. CA Ravikumar Patwa, Vice Chairman, is in absentia, and CA Chandrasekhar Chitale, Sir, Chairman of the Internal Audit Standard Board. Ruchi Jain, Ruchi Gupta, today's speaker, and CA Arti Bansal, Secretary. Welcome all. Now I request to take the charge.
Yeah, before we invite Ruchi to address, let me inform about the Internal Audit Standards Board. As you are aware, that audit is broadly bifurcated into a statutory audit and internal audit. Internal audit caters to the needs of the management so that whatever shortcomings are there, maybe internally if they are known, they can improve upon it. As far as internal audit is concerned, its role is all pervasive, be it manufacturing, be it trading, be it service industry. As far as divisions are concerned, sourcing, HR, marketing, all the divisions are covered for the purpose of internally verifying particularly whether the SOPs are followed, whether there is compliance with rules and regulations, whether the internal SOPs and whatever there is scope for the purpose of saving costs and such other things. Therefore, internal audit is really considered by the management as a value provider, and therefore it has got more demand from various internal audit, various corporates and other sectors. In order to recognize this need of internal audit to advise the management, we are also trying to have a revised definition of internal audit, because today it encompasses only looking within and pointing out the errors, non-compliances, etc. But now the responsibilities have increased, not only looking within, but you have to look beyond also. So if supposing country like USA imposing additional tariff, will it impact your company? Will it impact your competitors? And if it does, how to negotiate these challenges? So maybe there are departments like purchase, marketing, HR, uh, processing, accounting, but they are privy to only, they work in silos. So they are privy to the information relating to their department. And internal audit is the only department which is privy to all the functions. And therefore, it is expected of an internal audit department that maybe you, besides looking within, maybe you look beyond also, so that you will be able to comprehend the situation and advise appropriately the management. So that is one part. Secondly, besides pointing out errors, an advisory role also can be cut out for internal auditors nowadays, for the obvious reason that they look at the organization from 360 degrees. So these things need to be reflected in the definition. So the Internal Audit Standards Board also proposes to revise the definition, and we appeal all the members to contribute to that definition. Recently, we have revised all the internal audit standards. There are now 21 standards, 3 are relating to quality and the rest are relating to conduct of internal audit. So they are offered for public exposure, and after public exposure, public comments, they will be considered in Internal Audit Standards Board, and thereafter they will be finalized at the meeting of the board held subsequently. So maybe you can contribute in this particular initiative. Bank branch audit, which is one front runner course of the board, and there the study material was not revised for quite some time. So background material has been revised, and that is also offered for public feedback. So there also, those who are particularly involved in bank audit, they should inform us what should be done. So these are some of the initiatives of internal audit department. Friends, standards are developed, definition is changed, you are bringing the background material. But then unless you know what is the scope for internal audit, what is use of all this study? Because now the study after qualifying as a chartered accountant is a purpose driven. And the purpose is to serve the organizations and to earn by serving. And I'm very glad that a vibrant member of CIRC, a regional council member from Jaipur, Ruchi, has taken Ruchi in this particular subject. And she will be enlightening us on this particular arena. So thank you, Ruchi, for really selecting this wonderful topic. And I'm sure those who attend this particular session will draw some better ideas from your discourse and would be benefited by a couple of assignments in due course of time. Thank you, Ruchi, for joining. And over to you, Shirish. Thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much, sir. Thank you.
Coming to the subject, first I will introduce our today's speaker, Ruchi Gupta. She is a past secretary and treasurer of the Jaipur branch. Presently, she is a regional council member of the CIRC region of the institute. She has an expertise in the labor law advisor, finance and subsidies consultant. She had a vast experience of more than 16 years of a professional working with multinational companies like Deloitte, Genpact, and now she is having her own CA practice, CA firm, providing consulting to large number of clients, among which manufacturing industries, hospitals, traders, builders, hotels, exporters. She has specialized in providing professional expertise in business setup, tax planning, labor law advisories for MNCs, debt and equity funding, and subsidies consulting. And very happy to share that she has received an Excellence in Professional Award from Finance Minister of India, Nirmala Sitharamanji, in April 24. Really very much strong background. Ruchi, welcome. And I request her to start her this thing. Before that, I would like to throw some light about the today's subject of internal audit. Basically, opportunities for chartered accountants are increasing day by day in the internal audit area, mainly because statutory audit as a professional function has certain limitation, because normally appointments are for 5 years, and it is very difficult many times to have changes in small size and mid size chartered accountant firms, because those are there for number of years. But because of the mergers, acquisition, the size of the organizations are increasing day by day. And the role of a chartered accountant as an internal audit has really changed from the traditional way of compliance checking, which is becoming a strategic management function. Internal auditor has become is a very strong grounding in finance, accounting, and mainly in risk management. And ideally, now it has become a, an area which emphasizes mainly on the risk management as well as the governance, operational efficiencies, and fraud detection and fraud prevention. So the role is this chartered accountant's role as an internal auditor is open in all different areas like banking, finance, corporate sector, specialized areas like ESG and sustainability audits, IT and cyber securities, public sector, government organizations, and many more. So without uh, sparing more time, I will request Ruchi to continue her detailed analysis on opportunities of for chartered accountants in internal audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Suresh sir, for the wonderful background, sharing the wonderful background about myself, and for setting the tone for the program today. That was really important. And thank you so much, Chitle sir, for your words of wisdom. I think sir is doing great, and I think we all must appreciate the hard work being done by our Central Council members at ICI front. All the revision in the standards, all the revision in the course material, or the revision in the accounting publications, that is really helpful for all of us. In case we follow those updates, we are there. We are perfect in doing our work. We are already doing great, and we will be much better if we follow all those updates. So thank you, Jyoti sir, for having the idea of organizing sessions like this for all of us. Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen. So internal audit is not a new thing for all of us. We all do a bit of it while doing our work, while doing audits, while doing financial audits, I must say, or while doing stock audit, concurrent. Every day, every part of our life is covered with internal audit. And we talk about opportunities for chartered accountants as internal audit. Reason being, we are not focused it to be a separate area as an opportunity. We understand there is an internal audit. We understand there are internal controls in an organization that we have to follow, and we are following that as well. We are doing that as well, but it is a specified area. It is a separate area from your regular audit work. We do not realize that. We do not see it as a separate opportunity. I understand that being a statutory auditor of an organization, you cannot do internal audit. But for the organizations where there are separate statutory auditors, you can enroll yourself for internal audit. There are tenders, there are various requirements of internal audits. We will mention later on in our slides who is mandatory required to do internal audits and who is not. But anyhow, even if it is not mandatory in all the organizations, all the companies, still a company can appoint internal auditors at their will. It is not mandatory, but it is voluntarily. So in that kind of companies, we should identify the opportunities of internal audit. It's a very great task, and it adds value to your work. So in financial audit or statutory audit, income tax audit that we do, so as mentioned by Sridhi, there is some limitation. There are some timing constraints. There are some access constraints. We may not be able to check 100% whatever the accounts are. We may not be able to spend 100% time in one client. But while you are doing internal audit, you are able to access entire books, accounts, the procedural setup in the organization, everything you are able to identify. So you are able to identify the hits done by them. You are able to identify the frauds done by them, misses they are doing. So and you are in a position to suggest a lot of things to our client that can add value to them. So it's a very respectable profile, and it really adds value. So client also consider you appropriate and important because you are adding value to the client. And as mentioned by Chitlis already, that internal audit is done for the support of the management. So we are identified, an internal auditor identifies the areas where improvements needs to be done in the organization, where management has to take an action. So it's a support to the management because you are identifying the improvement areas for their processes, for their businesses, for their companies. So it's a value add. It's a value add to the company. So it is always respected and it is always valued. And of course, the remuneration that you get in internal audit is also much higher than the statutory audit at times because you are giving value to the company. Definitely. Today, everything is based on the value that you're giving to your client. If you're giving value to your client, you are identifying their leakages, you're identifying their leak processes, you're improving their processes, you're stabilizing their processes, you will definitely get more remuneration from them. So welcome everyone. Welcome to all the audience present here. Today, we will talk about internal audit. When is it mandatory? When it is voluntary? What all we have to do in internal audit, how this approach has been derived, or how it is developing day by day. And as mentioned by the chairman of the committee, internal audit is getting more and more importance day by day because procedures are changing. Now the expectations of the client is changing. Now the client is not just aware of the financial figures. They want their processes to be strengthened. They want their processes to be 100% leak proof, 100% sure and secure, so that compliances will not affect them, right? For that, internal audit is a great opportunity, and it is on us how we identify those opportunities in any of the client. I will also tell you how we can actually identify the opportunities for internal audit in any of the company. So as I already mentioned, that as an auditor, we focus on various things. We are sure that we have to ensure revenue is properly recognized, all the statutory dues has been paid. Because in case of goods or stock of a company, inventory is properly valued. We do physical verification, we do management representation, everything we do. For creditors and debtors, it is very well mentioned that we have to take debtors and creditors balance confirmation, and we do all these procedures. But what about internal audits? Do we check internal controls? Do we even aware of how the procedures are following in an organization? What is the structure? What is the workflow? What is their approval matrix? How is the authority being divided in an organization? Probably this could be a case, one person is doing everything in the organization. This could be a possibility, especially in the small organizations, unstructured kind of businesses. Everything is done by a same person. They only have one single accountant who is doing everything, or maybe a small accounts team that is doing everything. And there are higher chances of fraud. There are high chances of omissions, errors, a lot of things. So they could be a lot of missing compliances in that organization. But as an auditor, statutory auditor, are we able to report everything? Probably not, because we are always short of time. We have a certain timing constraint that we have to complete our audit by this date. So, and accordingly, we all know how much time is spent in each and every client. But while we are doing internal audit, we are in regular touch with the client. We are in regular touch with the organization. We are in regular review of the procedures, accounts, transactions, structure, everything of the client. So we identify the improvement areas. We identify the frauds happening. We identify the misappropriations that are being done in the organizations. Or even if not, if the structure we will able to identify. So we ensure while doing an audit that all the accounting standards are being followed. All the accounting standards are followed, all the auditing standards are followed. But do you think there is any internal audit standard that is being considered while doing an audit? I don't think so. Unless the internal audit is specifically important or voluntarily or mandatory for the organization, internal audit standards are not at all being considered while performing an audit. And that is the reason the internal audit may be weaker. However, do you know that we have to even report in our independent audit report while we are preparing it for a company that all the internal controls are being set up? We have reviewed the internal controls, we have checked the internal controls, and there is no flaw, there is no fraud has been detected, there is no errors or omissions has been considered. We report these kind of lines in our independent audit reports. I'll show you one sample internal audit report that I have downloaded from the Competix itself, so that because some of us are using Competix software, and we exactly copy those reports and just change the client name, figures, and just report out in our ROC filing. So I'll show you what the internal audit, independent audit report says. And there are a lot of mentioning about internal audits, internal controls, financial controls, all this quality of the data management. But do we check that? I don't think so. So today it is important, since we are spending 1 to 2 hours in this session, in case we understand the role of the importance of internal audit, this is going to help you a lot in performing your duties as a statutory auditor as well. And definitely, I'm sure with this, you will be able to identify new opportunities for yourselves. We keep on talking that the traditional practice is not suffice. We need to identify new areas of working. So internal audit, believe me, it's a great audit, and it is applicable to every area as well. So whether you are a statutory auditor, internal auditor is important. Whether you are a concurrent auditor, there also internal auditor is important, because you understand how the transaction flows in a bank, right? Even if you are a stock auditor, then also internal audit is important to understand how they maintain their inventory, how the data and creative management is happening. So everywhere, believe me, internal audit is a part already. We do not realize while we're doing it that we are also reviewing internal procedures, internal audit procedures. In case we identify the opportunities for internal audit as a separate area altogether, I'm sure this is going to add to your value, to your profile, that you are doing this work as well. So there are currently, I guess, there are already 32 accounting standards that has been issued by ICI. This could be increased, maybe this is last updated few months back. But no single accounting standards talk about internal controls or internal audit. You see the accounting standards and you realize that no single accounting standard talk about internal control or internal audit. Let's talk about auditing standards. There are total 37 auditing standards. Even then, no single auditing standard is specified to internal audit work. They talk about working on using the work of another auditor. They talk about using the work of internal auditor. If he's doing this, if he has done some work, take that report, understand that report. But no auditing standard says that you have to review the internal audit procedures of the organization yourself, right? They also talk about using the work of an expert. So while they say that using the work of an internal auditor, it means that we have to see what the internal auditor is reporting. Do we see the internal audit reports while winning statutory audits of our companies? I'm not talking about the banks. We do see internal audit reports of the banks while we are there for statutory audits or concurrent audits. But do we see internal audits when we are doing statutory audit? Probably no. We are asking for the reports. We are just going through the report, but we are not deep diving the observations. We are not deep diving the procedure. We do not try to identify on our own what does the internal audit report says. At times, we just go through the report and look for the observation. Is there any observation? No, then it is okay. So that is the only work we do from the report of the internal auditor, nothing else. However, we already know and we keep on cripping about it. There are a lot many regulators. Now we are being attacked by the NAFRA. We are being at times we're attacked by the SEBI Institute itself. ROC is issuing a lot of penalties here and then every time to the auditors, to the CS, everyone. We are being attacked by the RBI, and definitely income tax and GST departments are nowhere far. A lot of regulators are always lying above our heads. And the only safest way to come out of these regulators or to satisfy these regulators is maintaining the documentation of the work that we are doing. If you're maintaining the documentation of everything, whether it is statutory audit, whether it's a concurrent audit, whether it's a stock audit, whether it is internal audit or system audit, everywhere, if you're maintaining documentation, we are safe. If you're doing our work, even then something happens in the company, then you are safe because you have things to prove that you are doing well. And internal audit gives you a broad mindset that how the document should be prepared, how the things should be analyzed, how to check the procedures of the company, right? So that's how internal audit plays a very great role. In case there are companies in your client base as well, when internal audit is not happening, do spend some time to understand the internal audit procedures. In case you feel that company needs an internal auditor, even if it is not mandatory on them, you should suggest an internal audit requirement for them. And it is really helpful if they are doing internal audit for themselves. It helps management. So it helps management, then it helps statutory auditors, then it helps them to safeguard themselves from the compliances from the various regulators as well. So that's how the internal auditor roles emerge, because compliances are increasing, because regulators are increasing, because we are always in a figure of being attacked by regulators. So it is better to work in a safe environment, and for that, to ensuring that whatever we are certifying is accurate, is fraudless, is free from frauds, is free from errors, and everything has been compliant. Internal audit plays an important role. So it's a great opportunity. In case you have not done it before, it is a very easy task. We have to follow certain specified procedures. We have to just apply our minds according to our clients. We can change our internal audit procedures. Okay, let's understand the difference between statutory audit and internal audit. At times, when we went to statutory audit, we say that we are already covering internal audit. Or maybe we say that what is the need of internal audit? We are already doing everything. No, I don't think so. Statutory audit is basically driven all throughout towards your financial statements. We only certify the financial statements. We only certify that all the figures, numbers has been accurately reported, or we are reasons to believe that they are accurately reported. We do not talk about internal controls, whether the procedure is right, whether management itself is involved in the fraud or not. We are not there to certify that. So we are just focusing on the financial figures, financial presentations, and financial disclosures. So, but internal audit plays a wider role. It talks about financial as well as operational effectiveness. So it is much more beyond the statutory, and that's how the fees of the internal audit is also higher. We follow statutory guidelines or maybe auditing standards or accounting standards while performing statutory audits. While we are doing internal audit, we have to make a process flow. We have to make the process charts. We have to understand the workflows, how the entries are going on, how the authorizations are going on, how the how the system reciprocate, how the background of the system is like, what output the system is giving, how is this output being distributed, how is this output being used later on by the auditors or maybe by the users of the financial statement. So that's how internal audit plays a wider role. It has much more scope. And so, but always remember that statutory audit is all for the users of the financial statements. It is for the stakeholders. It is for the management. It is for the customers. It is for the creditors. It is for the shareholders, everybody. Okay. But internal audit is for the management. It is being done so that to make management aware that these are the good things or the strengthening or the controls that you have already put in, and these are the improvement areas or maybe the frauds that we detect or maybe the leakages that we detect during the audit. So these are improving the quality of the work, quality of the procedures, quality of the business. So that's all about internal audit. And as I mentioned that statutory audit is a one-time fee. So we go once in a year, we do the audit. And because at times nowadays, since we understand the situation, how the bank audits are happening and the reduction in the quantum of the bank audits and the reduction in the quantum of the statutory audits, everything, we see a drop in the revenue from the bank audits and all. But internal audit is increasing because the need for internal audit is increasing now. Management is now aware. Management knows that internal audit is important. And in case you are able to deliver good internal audit work to them, they definitely are happy to pay you. So, and it generally has quarterly billing. So you have a regular billing source, regular revenue source from internal audit. So it is much more remunerative than statutory audit if you're doing it for a good company and you're doing value add. So value add is definitely very important. It shouldn't be that you have made a checklist of the work and you're just going there, doing the work, filling that checklist and just reporting out that everything is working fine. You have to understand the procedures. You have to point out the errors. We have to point out the leakages. You have to understand the flows that is not working right. Okay, so you have to do that. In case you add value to the client, they are ready to pay. Chitli sir has just said that they are in process of changing the definition of internal audit. But let's understand what is internal audit from this definition first. Internal audit provides independent assurance of the effectiveness of internal control. It is very important. It is an independent assurance. I said in the beginning as well, in case you are a statutory auditor of a company, you cannot be the internal auditor because with that, you are not independent. The statutory auditor will only be independent if he is not the internal auditor, right? So it provides an independent. Any person who is an internal auditor does not belong to the company, has no conflict of interest with the company. And that is how he will be able to prepare a report. He will be able to identify the leakages only if he is independent. So it provides an independent assurance on the effectiveness of internal controls. Internal control means the internal procedures, internal workflows, how the transactions are being happened in the company, who authorizes the transaction, who initiated the transactions, how is being approved by the board of directors. Everything is part of the internal control. Whatever the procedure, whatever the flow chart is there of the transaction, that is what internal control is all about. So it's an independent assurance of the effectiveness of internal controls and risk management processes. Risk management process is very important. It is the duty of internal auditor to ensure that risk management processes has been enabled in the organization. In case they see any risk, they highlighted it immediately, they escalated it immediately, and the respective procedures are being taken care to mitigate that risk. That is really important in case of internal audit. And it is all for governance. Governance means jahan bhi governance word aata hai, those charged with governance means management. Okay, and achieve organizational objectives. So objective हमेशा वही रहेगा, organizational objectives. Otherwise, there is no sense. Whenever you are working for a company, objective is to meet the goals of the organization, right? You are doing everything to meet the goal of the organization. So अगर हम इस definition को together पढ़ते हैं, तो internal audit provides independent assurance on the effectiveness of internal controls and risk management processes to enhance governance and achieve organizational objectives. So whatever we are doing it to give assurance to the management that everything has been set up in the place. All the internal controls are effective. Whatever there in the place is effective. And the risk management process is in place. Everything is in place so that there is no risk of fraud or any kind of error in the organization. So we focused on few points. For example, independence. It is important because unless it is independent, there is no point of getting internal audit done. Accounting and audit, statutory audit is already going on in any kind of companies, individuals way, firms way. So there is no point unless there is an independence. Statutory auditor को ही वही काम दे दिया गया, there is no role. Accountant ही internal audit report provide कर रहा है, there is no role. Accountant बना रहा है, review auditor कर रहा है, then it is fine. But internal audit team has to be separate, it has to be independent. Then only it will be a value addition to the company. Otherwise, there is no point. So now आपको लगेगा कि हम कैसे लेके आएंगे, हम एग्जिस्टिंग क्लाइंट से ही मांग सकते हैं काम, एग्जिस्टिंग क्लाइंट को ही बोल सकते हैं कि हम इंटरनल ऑडिट भी कर देते हैं, आपका वीक है, हम इस पे टीम बिठा देते हैं. No, you cannot do that. But in case you know companies where there are separate internal statutory auditors, you can definitely see if there is an opportunity for internal audit there. Now, how will you identify if there is an opportunity or not? You have to read their financial statements, you have to read their audit reports. In case it's a public listed company or private limited company, every document is available in the ROC, right? Every document is available in MCA portal, so you can download their audit reports. In case you realize, oh, this is a kind of industry where there are certain leakages, we are able to identify in your own client base, or maybe you understand that these are the companies, or maybe these are the industries where there could be need of internal audits, strengthening internal controls. You can download the audit reports, independent audit reports, and other publicly available documents and see the kind of reporting the auditor has done. If you find any qualification, if there is a modified opinion, you can read those opinions, qualifications, and reach out to them for improving or enhancing their internal controls. And definitely they will ask you for doing it by yourself only. So that's how you can generate the opportunities there. So you need to identify the opportunity, but for that you need to do your efforts. Otherwise, there are tendering systems. A lot of just like concurrent audit, there are applications, there are postings of various jobs and opportunities on the various websites, in their own websites, in the public platforms as well. And from that as well, you can apply and get an opportunity for internal auditor. But otherwise also, we should, for example, if you feel that this is a particular industry in which you are a master, you know every insight about the organization, you know every phase where the internal controls is already weaker there, then you should read those balance sheets, you should read those financial statements, audit reports, there are opinions, auditors remarks, everything, and you would be able to add value to the client. Because in case you know a procedure, how to mitigate that risk that is already associated with the industry, then you can add value to the client by offering your consultancy to them, right? So that's how you can you need to do a research and reach out to the prospective clients. Second, what we talked about is internal control and risk management. As I mentioned, internal control is important. Internal control means the procedure of doing a transaction, and risk management is in case you find a risk, what is the process to mitigate the risk, or what are the various steps that you have embedded in the organization, in the procedure, in the workflow to mitigate that risk. Then governance, definitely you're doing everything for the management. So it's a governance and organizational objectives. That is primarily important. Everything you do is for the management, for the organization. So organizational objectives should be met. Let's also understand in which all companies internal audit is mandatory, so that you can identify if there is any company where you can be pitched in as an internal auditor. So every listed company. So it is not mandatory for all for now. However, considering the kind of companies that are getting listed so frequently these days, we know that it is with more and more listing in the process, we have more and more opportunity for internal audit. Just like we have more and more opportunities for independent directors now, because once the company is listed, they have to appoint independent directors. Similarly, internal audit is also mandatory in case the company is a listed company, but there are certain unlisted public companies who all are also required to get the internal audit work done. And for them, the paid up capital should be more than 50 crore or more paid up share capital. Then they are supposed to get the internal auditor appointed. Turnover of 200 crore rupees or more. In case the turnover is more than 200 crore, then also they are required to get the internal auditors appointed. Outstanding loans and borrowing from bank or financial institution exceeding 100 crore rupees. If they have done the funding from the public of more than 100 crore rupees. They have borrowed funds, they have taken loans from the banks for more than 100 crore rupees. They need to get the internal auditor appointed. So you identify whether any of your client, any of your known fall into these categories. If yes, then there is an opportunity for internal audit. Outstanding deposits of 25 crore or more at any point of time during the financial year, then also it is important. And please note that it says preceding financial year. इस साल नहीं हुआ, पिछले साल होना चाहिए. जिस साल भी आपके इन फाइनेंशियल फिगर से आप एक्सीड कर जाओगे, उस साल आपको इंटरनल ऑडिट की रिक्वायरमेंट मैंडेटरी हो जाएगी. आपको इमीडिएटली इंटरनल ऑडिटर अपॉइंट करना पड़ता है. पिछले साल होना चाहिए, राइट? तो आप इस साल अपॉइंट करोगे. दैट्स हाउ इट इज. तो ये तो हमने बात की कुछ पब्लिक लिमिटेड कंपनीज के बारे में, बट देयर आर सर्टेन प्राइवेट लिमिटेड कंपनीज एज वेल जिनको इंटरनल ऑडिट करवाना मैंडेटरी है. फॉर एग्जांपल, द कंपनीज हु हैव turnover of 200 crore rupees or more during the financial year, preceding financial year, they are also required to get the internal audit done, mandatory for them. So they have to appoint the internal auditors. In case there are outstanding loans and borrowings from banks or financial institutions, public financial institutions, exceeding 100 crore rupees or more at any point of time during the preceding financial year. पिछले साल किसी भी आपका 200 करोड़ से टर्नओवर ज्यादा हो गया, या आपके आउटस्टैंडिंग लोन और बोरोइंग्स जो है फ्रॉम पब्लिक फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस exceeding 100 crore, तो आपको अगर ऐसा है तो आपको इंटरनल ऑडिटर अपॉइंट करना पड़ेगा, and you have to mandatorily get the internal audit done. Now, sir told about that they are revising certain internal audit standards, and they have added 5 new, I think the 5 new internal audit standards, and currently the new internal audit standards are 21. This is what Lisa has already said in the beginning. So these auditing standards, internal audit standards, are mandatory to everybody who performs internal audit. And just for your information, internal auditor need not mandatory a chartered accountant. He could be a CS, he could be a CMA, or any other professional. So that's what is defined in the Companies Act, who can be a internal auditor. So in that, any CS, CA, or CWA or professional can be a internal auditor. So these auditing standards, will that mean that it is binding to all of us, all the professionals other than CS as well? It is not mandatory, but it is recommendatory. Okay. Generally, what companies do, company generally appoint chartered accountants as internal auditors only, but there could be a possibility that a company is more satisfied with their internal auditor. So these standards, which are issued by ICAI, are not mandatory on those auditors. However, it is generally suggestive to follow all the standards by every professional, so that there is a systematic approach by everybody, right? All the professionals follow the same systematic approach. There is a consistency in the approach while doing the internal audit. Okay. So, and what does these standards do? Why these standards? Just like accounting standards, just like auditing standards, these standards establish uniform evaluation criteria. Okay, what is to be checked? How is it this measured? How it is assumed that the controls are adequate? How you can say that the controls are weak? There is a high risk or a low risk. But there are certain uniform evaluation criteria, methods, processes, and practices which are being defined in the internal audit. They are certain procedural, and they are certain quality enhancement standards. The standards are pronouncement which form the basis of conducting all internal audit activity. How to do it, what is the process, what is the path, what is to be reported, how is the report is being prepared, everything is there in the internal audit standards. Designed to help the internal auditor to discharge his responsibility, of course. In case we are new, how we understand that how the audit is being done with the accounting standards, with the auditing standards, and now the internal audit standards. It helps you to identify and to understand what all need to be checked while performing an internal audit, what all work is to be done while performing an internal audit. That's how the internal audit standards are created, with the intention to provide a guidance to the auditor, what all things to be checked or understood before finally making a report, to understand how the company is performing, how a business is performing, how the controls are being set. These standards on internal audits to be read with the preface to the standards on internal audit, framework governing internal audit, basic principle of internal audit. Means these are not just the individual standards to be followed while performing an internal audit. And then you have to use preface to the standards and basic principle of internal audit and framework governing internal audit as well while performing the internal audits. And I have written 19 standards. Probably this could be 2-3 months old. SARS has mentioned that there are 21 standards now that are going to be published very soon, and you have to follow those standards. If you are a certified internal auditor, you are doing an internal audit for the company which you have been appointed for. And these are recommended. Please note that these are recommendatory, these are not mandatory, but it is good to use these standards because it gives you a detailed guidance on how internal audits is being done. And these are a set of minimum requirements. Of course, अगर ICI ने issue किया है, तो they expect that these internal audit standards are followed, and these are a set of minimum requirements that every auditor has to follow while performing an internal audit of a company. Okay, and besides, as I told you that besides chartered accountants, it could be a CS, it could be a CWA, or any other professional who can perform internal audit, and it is mentioned in section 138 of the Companies Act 2013. So now, if non-members are doing internal audit, are they required to follow this approach? Yes, it is suggested to apply this approach, but it is not mandatory. But to discharge the responsibilities, to duties appropriately, it is always recommendatory to use this policy. So in case you have a question how to learn how to do internal audit, because once we attend a session, we realize that, this is a new opportunity, we should also work upon. But we realize later on that it is not that easy. We cannot just do it by ourselves. We need some guidance. We need some, support from somebody who can tell us how to do an audit, how to do a new area of work, right? So these standards are really self-explanatory and really helpful. You can follow these standards, you understand these standards, take a publication, read it thoroughly, mark the important words, draw flowcharts of your procedure that we need to, and create checklist for yourself. That is really helpful. Create a checklist, whatever you need, depending on the different type of industries. Create a checklist. If I'm going into service industry, what are things I need to check, what are procedure I need to follow, how I will divide the work, how I will make a report, how will I report out a high medium risk in the organization, what will I do to mitigate those risks, how will I report to management in case I found something fraudulent in the organization, how that will be considered while making a report. So all these, prepare a checklist, prepare drafts for yourself. Once you prepare draft for yourself from these accounting standards publications, you will understand daily, slowly and steadily, your approach towards internal audit. That's how it is going to help you. Okay. So for now, it is not mandatory at all, so you don't have to worry about that. But yes, slowly and steadily, it is going to be mandatory soon, to be made mandatory soon by the council. And once it is mandatory, it has to be followed in a proper manner. So it is better to follow these standards. Make a practice of following the standards since beginning. Otherwise, it is very difficult. Once you have made a habit of doing an audit in one manner, it is very difficult to change later on. How is this done? How to add on? So the best way is to do any audit, not just internal audit, is to make checklists. Make a checklist of every work that you do. That is the best thing to do. You never forget any important thing, any important checks, any important, reconciliation. No, you do not miss anything if you have a certain checklist or procedures already defined for yourselves while going for an audit. So the SAI shall initially be mandatory for members performing internal audits in all listed companies, and then it will be mandatory for other companies. Because you think from a perspective of a small company, it is very difficult for them to hardcore follow the standards being designed by the ICI. But it is once implemented for public limited all listed companies, then slowly and steadily for all other companies, until the time all the notifications, guidance note, further clarification, circulars, and help will be provided in between, so that you will have a detailed understanding of the internal audit standards. Okay, this is how the internal audit standards looks like. So there are certain set of procedures. For example, 100 series belongs to key concepts. 200 series belongs to internal audit management. What all is being done in that. 300 and 400 series talks about conduct of audit assignments. How do you do an assignment? 500 series talks about specialized area, specific to certain industries, specific to certain procedures. Then 600 series standards on quality. They talk about standards on quality. As sir already told, that there are certain standards that are being designed to improve the quality of the work. Okay. And then there are certain standards to define the procedure to be followed while doing an audit. Okay. And then 700 series talks about miscellaneous matter. So that's how the standards are divided for the users of the internal audit standards. Now, a very important standard that we should talk about while we are discussing the opportunities and conduct of internal audit is SIA 120 that talks about internal controls. So internal controls, we all know what is internal control because we keep on talking about internal controls during our statutory audit as well. Let us see one statutory audit report, as I told you. I hope my screen is visible. So this is a draft this independent audit report, and I have given a filter of search to internal. You see, a number of times, 5 times we talk about internal controls in our internal audit, independent audit report, and this is a statutory audit report. See, auditor's responsibility for audit of financial statement, and we say that internal controls are satisfactory, internal controls are in place, internal controls are designed properly to conduct the audit. If we talk about that, but do we really check internal controls while we're doing audit? The question could be no for all the I understand for certain companies you are checking it. For big companies, there is already a process of checking internal controls, but maybe for the smaller entities, smaller companies or medium companies, we are not checking internal controls. So it is really important when we are giving a declaration that we are checking internal controls, we ensure that the internal controls are in place. We have understood or obtained an understanding of internal controls relevant to the audit. If we are saying that, then you should know first what is internal control at all. If we do not even know what is an internal control, how can we say that we have given an understanding or we have understood the effectiveness of internal control in this particular organization? We cannot declare that, right? But we are doing it. We are already doing it. You see rest of the declarations as well. We communicate with those charged with governance regarding, among other matters, the planned scope and timing of the audit and significant audit finding. And this is a report that I have downloaded from a very trusted software. And I think some of us are directly using the report of this software and we just publish it. So we are saying that we are following internal controls. We are reviewing internal controls and we give a declaration that we are satisfied with the internal controls. But before that, it is important to understand internal control as well. What is internal control? To what extent we are supposed to understand internal controls in statutory audit? That is also important. We are not supposed to do internal audit. Because internal audit karne lag gaye along with statutory audit, we will not be able to complete statutory audit in fact. So internal control kitne dekhne hain, kitne financial control, internal financial controls dekhne hain, internal audit procedures dekhne hain, that also we have to define. Okay, we have to understand the scope of our internal audit review as well while doing a statutory. But we should know whether the company is following certain internal controls or not. I will give you examples of industries wherein you have a client base. I'm sure you must be having those client base, and you will be surprised to know the kind of flaws in their internal control system we have identified certain times, right? I'll show that. So this internal control standard, internal audit standard says that systematic and procedural steps adopted by an organization to mitigate risk. That you have to understand the steps, you have to understand what all risk management procedures the organization has adopted so that in case any risk exists or comes in between, that will be mitigated. It is important for you to understand these areas while we are doing an internal audit of the organization. Okay, you cannot just say that we have understood the procedure. We saw that this person has initiated an entry, this person has reviewed the entry, and everything is in place. No, you have to understand the procedures adopted by the organization to mitigate risk as well. That is really important. So we understand what all kind of risk a company or organization or business faces. So we inherent risk, detection risk, right? There are certain risks associated while we are reviewing or we are doing audit of our company. So we should know what all risks are there and what the organization has placed or the procedures they have placed in place to mitigate those risks. Internal controls that mitigate risk of financial exposure. So internal financial controls, I've showed you internal financial controls, right? This is internal financial controls. So there should be internal controls in place to mitigate the risk of financial exposure. Okay, so that no financial figure is misstated. There is no financial fraud in the organization. That has to be ensured. How? Through internal financial controls. In case you put double entry system to double checking system in an organization, for example, there is a initiator of a transaction and there is an approver of a transaction. That is what? That is a internal control system. So this will mitigate the financial risk at all. That person who is initiating the transaction would know whom to pay, and then the person who is approving the transaction would also know to whom the payment has been initiated, and is he the right person to whom the payment should be made. So that kind of risk of giving the payment to a wrong account or intentionally putting a wrong account will be mitigated through internal financial controls. And then also internal controls relates to operational controls, that all the operations are being adequately controlled. Okay, there is no operational failure in the organization. There is no operational risk in the organization, that somebody else who should not have access to the organization is having access. That should not be the thing, right? Some ad hoc person or some other unauthorized person is making an action. That should not be there. So that is an operational risk, that the organization is performing or operating adequately. That is the operational risk that need to be mitigated. Then overall responsibility for designing, accessing the adequacy, implementing and maintaining the operating effectiveness of the internal controls lies with the board of directors. Please note that everything that is being done in the internal audit is for the management. Okay, we all are working for the management when we are doing internal audit. It is for their help. It is for their requirement that we are performing internal audit. Then it has to be independent. Okay, and then all your suggestions should be communicated to the management well, and management should take appropriate actions to all your suggestions. That is important, and then only your internal audit is efficient and satisfactory, otherwise not. Okay, so as I told you that why and where internal controls could be effective or internal audit could be effective. There are certain industries, as I shown: hospital industry, e-commerce seller, huge outside sourcing, government organizations, and manufacturing units. These are few of the areas or industries where I guarantee you that internal controls, internal audits plays an important role. And because of the implementation of the internal audits, a lot of frauds, a lot of delays has been removed. So, for example, in the hospital industry, why it is important there? Because there are a lot of transactions in the hospital industry. There are regular inflow, outflow of transactions. There are regular inflow and outflow of money. There are huge footfall in the hospital industry, because of which there are huge transactions, and there are higher chances of leakages and frauds in this kind of industries. And that's how hospital industry is one of the industry wherein internal controls is really important. If the internal controls are not in place in a hospital industry, I guarantee you a lot of frauds are already there in the hospital industry because of that. So internal controls has to be in place in industry, in the hospital industry, even if it is a small hospital or big hospital, believe me. Next is e-commerce seller. Reason behind e-commerce seller is a lot of reconciliation work is there in your e-commerce seller work organization. So what happens is a lot of transactions, the bulk nature of transactions. What happens is, because of that, while you're going for an audit in a e-commerce seller client, you're not able to do 100% audit. You're not able to do to review or check a lot of transactions, because number of transactions are very huge. Because of that, we do sample check. We do a lot of reconciliation data, greater reconciliations are there. Because of that, we do sample check, and because of that, there could be a possibility that the internal staff can create misappropriations. Then they can create vendors, dummy clients, dummy creators, data, anything can be done there, because the count is huge, number of transactions is huge, difficult to manage, difficult to reconcile. So these are the industries wherein, if internal controls are in place, that can really help the management, that can really help the accounting team, that can really help the statutory auditors to place a trust on the mechanism or the flow and structure of the transactions in these industries. So they are also, which is a very important, internal control plays a very important role. Huge outside sourcing, where we have a lot of vendors. So whenever there are huge vendors, there could be a possibility of dummy vendors, or maybe incorrect data or payment authorization mechanism. So for that also, internal audit and internal controls plays a very important role in these kind of sourcing industries. Government organizations, definitely, you know that in government organizations, everything is through note sheets. And in case note sheets are not in place, in case approval matrix is not in place, nothing can happen there. Already a lot of parties are involved, a lot of people are already there to take the benefit of the organization, so everything is in going on there already. So for that, it is important that internal controls has to be in place. Anybody has any question? A ping came in between. And then the manufacturing units, because a lot of procedures are there in the manufacturing, a lot of processes are there in the manufacturing units. It is really difficult for an auditor, especially a statutory auditor, to review each and every process. In those cases, it is important that internal audit is in place. And in case internal audit is in place, it is going to help the industry to mitigate their risk, to do a cost cutting, to proper flow of transactions, and to have a good recovery model from their customers and clients. So it helps a lot. And I'm quoting these few industries because I've done internal audit of these particular industry bases, and it really helped them. So let's see how we can actually contribute to individual industries with our internal audit procedures, and how our role can be efficient to them, and how actually you can pitch in case you have clients of these industries for having internal audit in place. Why hospital industry? You understand the flow of transaction of a hospital industry. A customer or a patient comes in, for them it's a customer. So a patient comes in, he registered on the reception counter, then he goes for OPD, then he goes for various tests in the laboratory, and then he goes for various checks, reports comes in, he makes a payment, he's maybe admitted, or maybe just given consultancy, and then the payment comes in. In case it's a cash payment, then the payment comes in cash or card, bank. In case it's a third party payment, in case he has done insurance, the payment comes from the third party, and the payment from the party comes after a few months, not immediately. The TPA settlement is done after a few months. So see the kind of tracking in every transaction. So multiple people are involved, multiple transactions are involved in a hospital industry, and it's a daily work. They have a daily work, huge cash collection, huge cash deposits, and huge lab receipts, everything. And in case the systems is not properly placed, if there are no such stable internal controls, everything is a failure. It is very difficult for a hospital industry to manage in case the internal audits or internal procedures are not in place. So we have done internal audit of one of the hospital industries wherein they are struggling with late filings, late closing of books, and late no receipts or no tracking of receipts from TPA, the insurance agencies. And they were showing themselves into losses because of that, because they're not able to understand whether the books are accurate or not. They're not able to understand whether the payment cycle is correct or not, whether they have any dues or no dues, or the payment will come or not even come. So because the number of transactions is huge in our hospital industry, and you see every few months and some new diseases comes up. So every hospital industry is always flooded with the patients, right? So with that, it is important for them to ensure that a procedure which is being conducted by a team or group of people has to be conducted by them, and has to be properly and adequately reported to the next cycle. Because the cycle or the nature of transactions or the flow of work in a hospital industry is too huge. Number of transactions are being followed. One person, register the patient, other person take the charge of all the OPD, then one person takes the charge of his to the operation room, yeah, or maybe ICU or something, then he has to be taken care of that. Then all the work there is, well, again, listing of medicines, listing of consumables, getting medicines from the store department, medical store, and returning them back the unused items. It's a huge process involved. And in case internal controls are not in place, there could be a great chances of frauds, misappropriations happening there. So hospital must adhere to, and then, okay, which I missed, hospital industry not just have to follow the regulatory requirements of the ICI, GST, income tax department. They also have to follow the requirements and the regulatory requirements of their own associations. HIPA, they have to do separate reporting to them, wherein they report about the patient management, the quality of work they are doing. So, and then labor department, a big area that they have to focus upon. Labor department, because they have huge contractual labors, the staff or the ward boys and all the nursing staff they have employed, they are all through contractuals. Then they have huge labor law compliances, they have huge cash management, they have huge reporting to different associations, medical associations in which they are affiliated. And then they have huge transactions with insurance agencies. So all these is a complicated process. This can only be sorted out if there are internal controls and internal place. So my friends, in case you have any clients which are hospital industry related, then you should always pitch in internal audit for them. And it's a great work. Once you do an internal audit of any organization, you get to know insides and outsides, everything about that organization. You understand every processes they follow, and then you understand what opportunities are there in individual processes. I'm not talking about the finance process, individual processes as well. What all you can add on to them, what all opportunities you can see. You can maybe you can put your team into vendor processes. You can put your team into some other customer relationship management processes and the reception team. There could be different placement of employee from your offices to their offices, with this understanding of various processes they are following during their organization movement of the organization. So hospitals, they are already adhering to various standards, billing practices and quality of care. So they have to report out to different agencies, different associations, and for that they need to have accurate and strengthened internal audit processes. Correct? They have to do reporting in different formats as well, and for that as well they need help. They definitely need help, and there also you can pitch in. Internal controls related to inventory management, huge inventory. They are a medical store. They have huge inventory management because they have product or making SKUs, very small SKUs, n number of SKUs. The management of inventory is again an opportunity in the hospital industry, that they have to do inventory reconciliation every time, because we are already doing it for many clients. So we realize that their software says something else and we are doing these entries where in Tally there is always a mismatch. So there is again an opportunity again in this area as well for a hospital industry where there are medical centers, medical shops. You can pitch in for inventory management there. You can pitch in for cash flow management there. They have certain cash flow issues because there is huge cash involved, huge payments involved, n number of vendors they are managing. मास्क कहीं और से आ रहे हैं, मेडिसिन आ रही हैं, कंज्यूमेबल्स आ रहे हैं, डिस्पोजल्स आ रहे हैं, everything. So a lot of vendor management is there. And then they have access to sensitive patient information. For that as well, you can ensure internal controls by keeping a control on transaction. Who all should have access to the data, who should not. So that is again one of the areas that is to be looked upon. Hospital handle significant financial transactions, including billing, payments, and disbursement. As I mentioned, number of processes, number of transactions to record, number of transactions to understand, to authorize. So huge employee based transaction. So there, in case you apply internal audits, internal controls, you apply AI, that can help the client a lot, and you can create your position there. You can have the opportunity to work with them and in various roles, not just internal audit, in various roles in this industry. And with internal audit, you can also access the quality of patient care, clinical process, operation efficiency. Of course, whenever you are internal audit work, you not only strengthen the procedures, you also have access to various processes, quality they are following, and you can always suggest them to improve the quality also by implementing the internal control procedures. Next is e-commerce seller. I think everybody should agree, in those who are selling through Amazon, Amazon, Flipkart, Myntra, Etsy, eBay, all these e-commerce sellers, huge transactions, huge number of transactions are being processed on a daily basis. and I'm saying on a daily basis. So it is not an easy task for the accounts team. I'm sure they are not having that much great accounting team or chartered accountants present in the accounting team. No, they are mixed of team. Some are chartered accountants, some are accountants only, some are undergraduates, some are trainees. This kind of tree, every organization has. Managing a huge number of transactions is always a task, especially for those who are already having excess of workload, right? So in case of e-commerce seller, you will always realize that there is a reconciliation requirement exist in between the various e-commerce operators and the party, right? You will always realize that whenever you reconcile the balance, you will always see that there are certain receivables. You have to receive your money because of the sale made through their portals, but you will realize that they are also having certain receivable figures from you. And this happens because in an e-commerce platform, there are certain commission charges, what they charge from you when they are providing a platform to you, right? But they never send those invoices through email. They never send through these invoices through courier. What they do is they upload these invoices on their portal. That is it. They upload the invoice on the portal. These will be reflected in 2B, but this never comes to you physically. There may be a possibility that you do not even realize that there are certain payables to them. There are certain charges they are being charging to you. And for that, there are certain payables for you, right? And you always believe that I've made sale through this seller, this operator, then there are a lot of receivables from this operator. We always feel that. But on the other hand, at the end of the day, whenever you do reconciliation, there are always payables due to these e-commerce operators. I realized this when I was auditing for one of the client. We are setting up internal controls for one of the client. The client was not even aware of the commission invoices, of the advertising fee, of the penalties, or other invoices that are being uploaded on the e-commerce portal. They're not even aware. Then they've never taken input of those invoices, assuming that it doesn't belong to them, or maybe it will be settled by the operator themselves, or maybe later on they will discuss and clear it. And they had huge liability at the end of the day, at the end of the year, when they reconcile the balances, when we ask for balance confirmation from the clients, then they, from the vendors, from the clients, then they realize that they have huge payables standing in their account for those vendors. The only reason behind this is mismatching, not efficient internal control, because they never realize the importance of internal control with this e-commerce operators. So believe me, guys, in case you have any e-commerce seller client, do pitch to him for internal control. Do check their internal controls. It is very difficult for them to manage that, and you have a great opportunity there as well. You just have to apply AI in this. I am sure you cannot do it manually yourself, but in case you apply AI in your work in these e-commerce sellers platforms, you definitely are able to, first of all, shorten the audit cycle. Second, strengthen their work, strengthen their paper receivables, strengthen their balances, and give a realistic picture of their books. We were able to give them an impact of approximately 20 to 30 lakh because of just reviewing and setting up internal controls in their cycle. That is how. So it is really important, and believe me, it is really, really very remunerative. In case you are giving some benefit to the client, a value add to the client, they have no issues in paying you. But you have, for that, you have to prove them that yes, you are suitable for them. Then yes, you are adding value to them, right? So where else we need internal controls and internal audit in e-commerce seller? E-commerce relies on vendors for goods and services. As I mentioned in earlier presentation as well, wherever there are huge vendors, and for e-commerce seller, there are huge vendors. They are selling things online. They are purchasing it from a lot of vendors, right? There could be a possibility that the accounting team does some manipulation and create fake vendors, right? Fake parties to whom the amount is payable, fake invoices from them, fake receipts from them. But because there are huge transactions, number of transactions are huge, you are not able to validate and understand every transaction. You may not be able to identify how vendors are created, how a payment has been approved. In the absence of that kind of controls, there will always be a chances of misappropriation of funds by the management team or maybe by the accounts team as well. Their internal controls play a very valuable role. Okay, So also, as I mentioned you, there are certain discount codes, promotions, and other charges that is being charged with the e-commerce operator, and you may not be able to record that because you're not even aware of that, because that is not communicated to you, and their team, accounts team, is not that efficient to record that. For that is where there has to be a checklist, there has to be an internal control in place. What all things do you have to consider while doing an internal audit, while processing a transaction, while calculating the cost? Everything has to be suggested to the client. And then inventory management, of course, huge inventory. They have to create huge inventory. And then the inventory could be obsolete. Obsolete inventory is also a pain for e-commerce seller. There also you can help them a lot by maintaining very minimal inventory, or helping them to identify which inventory, which stock is relevant for them, which stock is in demand. All these things can also be identified through setting up relevant internal controls in the organization. Okay, then next is validating transactions. As I told you, billing, credit card, delivery address, everything, they could be fraud in any kind of things, since the transactions as you. So you only tell, in case you have to do thousands of transactions in a month for a client, will you be able to be accurate about it? No, unless there are strong internal controls. And will you be able to identify frauds in case there are any? No, because you cannot check 1,000 transactions, right? You will do only sample testing, and you might not pick the sample which is misappropriated. So for that you have to apply some checks. They could be second pass key. They could be a thing like, one is the initiator of a transaction, other is the approver. And whenever there is something like initiator and approver, you are always benefited. There is always a strong chances of not having frauds or misappropriation in the organization, unless both the person are together, management and accounting both are together. Unless that this is the case, there are very less chances of frauds and misappropriations. Okay, now let's also talk about manufacturing units. In case you have certain manufacturing clients, those who are doing manufacturing, there is a huge stock and raw material for them. And then inventory management is a big task there. And you understand that Tally is not that, not that capable to record things themselves. It is you who has to input the data into the Tally, then only it will be able to identify what is the input, what is the then the stock journals and everything that has to be processed. For that, the team has to be capable enough. The accounting team, the teleoperator team has to be intelligent enough, capable enough to record all those kind of stock journals in case of manufacturing units. So whenever there is a manufacturing unit, inventory management is a must task. And for that, internal controls has to be properly placed. For example, when we go for stock audits of banks, for bank clients, we saw that in case the inventory software isn't in place, there are challenges in managing inventory, right? They give you ad hoc figure of inventory, and then what do? You do a sample testing. Again, you can only do a sample testing. In case there are no structured approach, you can always do a sample testing. But will that sample suffice? Will that sample depict the story of the entire stock? Not necessarily. And for that, it is suggestive to have internal controls in place, internal procedures, internal controls, so that every transaction is being seen and approved by two different person while the transaction is happening itself. जो बाद में हो गया उसको कोई करेक्ट नहीं कर सकता. जो ट्रांजेक्शन जिस वक्त हो रही है, if it is checked at that point of time only, the risk can be mitigated immediately. अगर कुछ हो ही गया after 6 months, what will you do? You cannot do. अगर आपने कोई फेक वेंडर क्रिएट कर रखे हैं and you are making payments to them, and the vendor discontinues after 6 months, and you're not able to identify till 6 months, but after 6 months a review happens and you identify that these are the fake vendor आया, पैसे लिया और चला गया, वो आपसे कंट्रोल में ही नहीं है, आपके कनेक्ट में नहीं है, how will you recover that? You cannot. पर अगर आपका इंटरनल ऑडिट चलता है, रेगुलर होता है, प्रोसेसेस रेगुलर रिव्यू होते हैं, then you can identify the flaws, misappropriations, frauds, any leakages in the organization right then only. Okay, for that reasons also internal audit plays a huge role. So we understood that whenever there is a huge number of transactions, internal audit plays a huge role. Internal controls helps to mitigate the risk. When there are more cash involved, there is a a number of cash transactions happening, a lot of transactions are happening in the cash, internal audits are really helpful. We understood that whenever there are huge vendors, then internal audit plays a huge role, because there could be a chances of misappropriation in those kind of clients. Now, costing control extend to labor, material, and overhead. We understand all this. Control procedures and purchase activities are critical. Proper vendor registration. So, vendor registration is a process that is really important to check every time there is a vendor onboarding, right? We, being an auditor, I don't think we ever check this vendor onboarding process. But believe me, guys, it is the company is showing fake invoices, fake purchases, and then payment is also made to them in their fake accounts only. But this cannot be checked. For that, what you can do is, in your statutory audit as well, you should do a sample checking of the invoices of the vendors. Check, ask the client to show. Give me a call to this client. Ask your client to showcase his ledger. Ask the client to showcase their bills. You will, from the face of the bill itself, you will understand this is a fake bill or a real bill. Ask your clients on a sample basis to give a call to the vendor and ask him for his balance confirmation. Do these kind of checks while you are doing statutory audit as well. It is really important. These days, you cannot trust your clients. And in case you want yourself to be safeguarded as well, you have to follow these procedures. It is important these days. Fake vendor registration, not a big task, unless there is a strong process in place. Anybody can do a fake registration. In the accounts team says this is a vendor, payment has to be made. How will a management, and do you think management is going to check each and every payment? If he's taking each and every payment, will he check each and every bank account that the payment is going to the right bank account? No, it is a team who is involved in doing all this work. Wherever there are huge transactions, high chances of frauds. The only thing to mitigate those challenges is implement internal controls, strong controls that can only help to mitigate those risks. Next says validating transaction. As I told you, payment cannot be checked fully. Billing address, payment payment account number, nothing can be checked fully. It can only be checked on a sample basis while you are doing statutory audit. It can only be thoroughly checked, fully compliant, properly adhered while doing an internal audit only. So whenever you have these kind of clients, they have a huge number of transactions, huge customer base, huge vendors to purchase for purchases, ask your clients to go for internal audit. Do not ask, maybe there could be a possibility that client says, no, I cannot bear this additional cost. Then suggest him not for a regular audit, but at least once in a year, twice in a year audit. Go for that as well. Okay, that helps you, because these days you understand that everybody is very concerned while signing any kind of any attestation work. While we are doing, we are very scared. There could be anything, any false representation by the management, and you will also be penalized. So it is better, whenever you feel any doubt, you have any doubt, you feel that it is not possible in normal course of audit to check all these things, suggest an internal audit. Not even proper internal audit, suggest an internal control to put in place. AI can help them. AI can really help them to put internal control in place in a very well-phased manner that will help them to mitigate the risk, mitigate the chances of frauds at least. I'm not saying all the errors cannot happen. Errors can happen. You can do a wrong publishing of account number. You can do many errors while doing accounting. That can be done, but at least fraudulent should not be there. Okay, and then errors can also be mitigated by implementing internal controls. There are certain procedures. More strengthened, more strong the procedures are, more prone your organization will be for no errors or less errors. Okay, so this is about the procedure or the various client bases where we can identify our internal control opportunities, internal audit opportunities. As I told you, mandatory is not for all the organizations, not for all the companies, but it is us who has to identify the opportunities wherein internal controls and internal audit can be pitched in for the clients. So, and it can be pitched in for your existing clients as well. Believe me, we have done it. We do not call it internal audit times. We call it strengthening the books, stabilizing the books. We call it revamping your books, restructuring your businesses, revising your strengthening the businesses. We can call it anything. May not be internal audit, but believe me, guys, internal audit plays a very good role in strengthening the books. These days, client is ready to pay. provided you show a value add to them, you show something is working for them, it reduces their time to review. I have a lot of clients who says that we want to come out of the accounting process. We want that we should not be involved in the accounting process. We should have everything on my screen on one page to understand what is in the what is happening in the business, what is happening in the accounts front. We do not want to get into accounts, and that can only be possible by implementation of AI. That can only be possible by implementation of internal controls that gives you a back-end support that yes, the accounts are correct, that the books are perfect, there is no fraud, there is no misappropriation, there is no leakages, everything can be reduced. It can give value add to the management, it can give more trust to the management just by implementing internal controls and internal audit. And so in case you have any clients wherein you can propose to them internal audit, you should do it. Do with them internal audits, propose them internal audits, make reports for them, make structures for them, make formats for them to create reports, make workflows for them, approval matrix for them. Approval matrix, believe me guys, it helps a lot. In case there are separate initiator and approver, it definitely helps to mitigate the risk of financial fraud. In case whenever there is approval for vendor creation, if we have two separate person initiating and approving, it helps to ensure that yes, vendor exists, there is no fraudulent vendor, there is no dummy vendor. I'll also give you an example of call center industry, BPO industry. There also internal controls plays a very important role because there are huge number of employee base, huge number. There could be a chances of fake employees, a lot of chances of fake employees, because salary is one of the area that doesn't require any backups to prove, right? If PFNES is not applicable to a person, then there is no backup to prove that this employee exists or not. So where there as well, put internal controls. If you have any client, they have those, for example, in service industry, in IT industry, they have huge employee base. There also you can implement internal audits in place. You can implement internal controls, procedures to be followed. Okay, authorization matrix to ensure that no dummy employee is being created. Ask for check, surprise checks of employees. And we have done this while I was in Deloitte. We have done this. We were told to ask employee his name and check the employee from this register, salary register, that exists or not. This is a kind of extent of testing that is required in case the industry is big in which you are auditing. So these kind of risks can only be mitigated through internal audits in place. Okay, so these are various opportunities that can help you to enhance your practice. This is one of the area. Internal audit is definitely one of the area. You can also look for other opportunities like labor law consultancy is one of the area these days. Sustainability reporting is one of the area there you can work upon. A lot of new areas has emerged over the period of time. These days, virtual CFO. If we talk about virtual CFO, how they are managing their work, they are not talking to client, physically speaking to client. They are not meeting the client at all. They are doing everything through systems. How they are doing, how they are performing, how they're doing their accurate reporting to them, is just because of setting up internal controls in their organization. In our practice as well, in our regular practice as well, these days, it is not possible to do practice management, properly managing billing, doing reporting, making 100% compliance of yourself without automation, without AI, without internal controls. So you yourself place internal controls in your organization and you realize the change that you see in your work as well. I'm not sure how many of you are using Google Sheets. That is a great tool, much more helpful and reliable than Google, Excel. Replace your work in Google Sheet. Everything should be done in the Google Sheet. Create a backup. I'm not sure how many of us really think of creating a backup after every cycle. After October, we are free with this cycle. Then we are entering in a new cycle. Do we create a backups? We are not. That is again a part of internal controls. Do we have a disaster management system for our businesses? Maybe not. So this is again a part of internal control for ourselves, for the clients. There could be a loss of data. If anything happens to a system, anything happens to a person, we are totally dependent on individuals. We're totally dependent on me, you, everybody, right? Individually. We are not, systematically doing any work. We are not standardizing the work. We are not automating the work at all. That all can be done through management of internal control. For that, procedures has to be tested and to be placed certain structures has to be created, and these all can be created through internal controls in place. Because whenever the technology is involved, internal controls plays a very important role, right? So all these work can be done through internal controls. Internal controls not in your client, it is an important role, it carries an important role in your own practice as well, right? We always struggle with timely billing. We can also get out of it through internal controls in place. Make a structure that just after doing the work, just after you didn't generate it, just after you do a signing, bill should be automatically generated. We are not doing it, it's just a simple task. We can do this even by applying small AI, but we are not doing that. But yes, internal control definitely is a internal audit is a great option to work upon, and it is remunerative. I am again and again mentioning it is remunerative. We keep on struggling with clients to get a fees of 25, 30, 40, 50 per audit. But while you are proposing an internal audit to a client, you're getting this fees maybe a monthly as a monthly figure. So it is very remunerative because you are doing a value add, provided you are doing a value add. That is important. Client will not hire you just to follow a checklist or maybe reporting same things every day. He will not give you payment for that. He want that you should do a value add. You identify their leakages, you identify the processes where they need improvement. For that, you need to yourself need to enter into the business, right? You have to enter into the floor of the client business and understand what is happening, who all are controllers, who all are initiating the transactions, who are the approvers, who all are involved in doing the transaction, who is whether a purchase requisition is there or not, whether a purchase order is there or not, whether the payment is made, invoice is received or not, whether the payment is made just after receiving the invoice, or maybe the cycle of payment is considered or not. These all are part of internal controls and internal audit. Everything is a system, and it is all internal controls that is to be said. And internal audit is checking that these systems are being followed. If there is no point of putting systems into place in case they are not followed, right? Anybody can breach any kind of responsibility, right? Authority, but that can only be tested by internal audit that yes, the system has been placed. There are certain clients who are very particular about all these accuracies, and they have put all the systems in place, but there is no person to monitor whether these systems are in place or not, whether they are being followed or not. And we as an Indian, we know everything how to crack the flaws. We know how to break a rule, so we already know that. So internal audit is definitely a great opportunity and an emerging opportunity for chartered accountants, considering the kind of frauds that are happening, considering the regulators that we are working with, the kind of responsibilities we are facing now, the compliances, the way it is getting automated. So with all this structure in place, internal audit can help you safeguard you as well, safeguard your client as well, and strengthening your reporting requirements. So any questions? Okay, I think I've covered most of the slides.
Thank you so much. Before going for the questions, I will prefer to just summarize what was being discussed, and or other we'll go for the questions first. Can you just pinpoint that why chartered accountants are good fitted for the role as an internal auditor?
The one of the basic reason is that we are not just financial experts, we are system experts as well. Nowadays we are working for system audits, we are working for many higher responsibilities, and hence since we carry all the kind of expertise, financial expertise, system expertise, we are carrying compliance expertise, we are carrying the logics expertise. So that's why chartered accountants are more preferable and more considered for internal audit roles. Does this answer your question, Shirish?
Yeah, basically what has happened is
The voice is echoing.
maybe because the tax audit pressure or the nearing days for Diwali, the overall participants are very less. and maybe the information might not have reached to the individual members or the different branches in details. So I find participants to be very less. Actually, the committee should take care of spreading this particular such type of webinars on to a large membership, so that at least we can have a group of 50 plus or 100 plus members.
Right, right. Because generally we have good participation in webinars at least.
The time is a very crucial time just now,
Time is very
because
crucial. Absolutely.
because
I
of
appreciate you taking out
the
time
individual
for.
practitioners, particularly involved in tax audit or company audit or even tax returns.
Correct, correct.
They are struggling with the dates and the time, and this year everything has delayed so far. So it's a really very challenging situation. One more, normally when we talk about the tools for audit, you have also referred the AI as a tool which we can use. But in addition to AI, do you find any specific tools which can have a for such type of detailed investigation? And also, I request you to throw light in conventional ways. When we used to talk about the internal audit, normally it is considered to be 100% verification or the detailed verification of all the transactions. But because of the volume game or the number of transactions which are increasing, as you are referred in all type, maybe hospital, maybe e-commerce, maybe manufacturing, you are referred that the transaction volumes have increased a lot. So in such situation, what really you find to be, can you throw more light on the sample selection, or are there any automated tools to consider for using mainly with the specific object of internal audit?
Is tools, and second is the traditional approach and the versus the new approach. So let me just tell you, if we talk about tools, I think every tool is basically AI driven. In some of the tools, AI is not properly used or not aggressively used. It's just Google Sheets. In fact, just Google Forms, Google Sheets, and workflows. These few tools can help you to establish internal controls as well. You do not have to go for very fancy AI driven tools. Only using Google Sheets and Google Forms can help you implement internal controls in the organization. The hospital industry that I was mentioning, we have done internal control setup for one of the hospital client, wherein we have just created Google Forms for everything, for even for onboarding of a patient, onboarding of a vendor, doing a billing, accounting, all the kind of accounting authorizations, everything. For everything, we have done workflow setup through Google Forms. So even a Google Form can help you, create automated tools for yourself. And then definitely various software companies are having various tool management tools for management of various processes. For example, for salary, for payroll, they have specific tools. You can use different softwares, minimum apps, minimum AI apps, very easy to use apps. They are using for salary management, for salary reporting, payroll reporting, making master data. So depending on your usage, depending on your client, depending your capacity to pay, you can define your tools, and you can get your tools automated, and you can get your tools customized as well. Nowadays, there are certain companies who have, what they have done is they have already set up their tools. They've already prepared their softwares, a very small softwares for different individual processes. For inventory management, they have their softwares. For customer management, they have their software. For payment management, payment raising, payment management, getting automatic reminders for payment, for all these processes, there are already certain tools in process in available in the market. You just have to identify the vendor. You have to say them to give you a demo of the tools, and you can implement those in your businesses. Don't need to customize. You can just implement those tools. for one of our client, we got this software. They were in process of getting the software updated because the existing software was not accurate. They were not able to implement and integrate that with Tally appropriately, so that timely completion of work is there. So what they have done is they have switched to an automated software that is already in the market. So what they have done, the software vendor does is they just modernized and customized the software as per their requirement. That is it, and it costs them lesser because it's already manufactured software in the market. You can just use those. So tools depends on your requirement, totally your requirement. If it is, you think that it's kind of company wherein we need more tools, we need more checks, we need more structures in place, then definitely you go for AI related tools. Otherwise, a lot of work can be automated, a lot of work can be structured, and internal controls can be set up for a lot of work through Google Forms as well. And the other way you asked, the traditional versus new approach. Yeah. So in traditionally, you are right. Whatever we used to think about internal audit is going and sitting in the organization along with the accountants and continuously monitoring each and every transaction what they are doing. Nowadays, a lot of reporting can be done through what people who are giving service of virtual CFO do. They prepare reports. They prepare very fancy automated reports with which you are able to understand the weaknesses in the process through various charts, pie charts, graphs. There are certain variance analysis kind of work they are doing, and with that you are able to identify the processes where there is a challenge. So that kind of work now is being done. Now people do not go to client place and vouch each and every transaction. That is not being done and no more a part of internal audit. More of analytical work is now a part of internal audit. Identifying the differences, variances, reporting, bringing out the reports, doing various kind of calculations, doing estimates is now a part of internal audit estimations working. It is no more traditional and vouching anymore.
True. Any other questions from the participants?
So probably either they have understood everything or they are not able to understand anything. Everything goes.
No, everyone must have understood major part of the presentation which you have made, because it's a day-to-day subject for any person. Particularly, it is extension of the statutory audit, or it is a basic requirement that we must understand.
Correct.
Industry-wise, it may differ from person to person or the experience.
Correct.
But otherwise, yes, it is applicable.
Right.
So, on the assumption that there are no other questions, I would like to throw some light on what has happened for last 1 hour, 35 minutes, 40 minutes. Chitale sir has rightly pointed out and the need of an internal audit. He has also pointed out that revised a definition that instead of just going and looking within, it is something that look beyond. And he has also specifically mentioned that this is the only department, that is internal audit, which is concerned with all other departments put together. And he has just given a good idea that it is an advisory role, and not just an advisory role, but it is having a 360-degree view of all the transactions, all the processes, systems, etc. He has also mentioned about the internal audit standards, which are there being published for commentary and all that, and 21 standards are likely to be coming into picture on record. Coming to our speaker, Ruchi Gupta madam. She has pointed out the regulatory requirements, particularly regulatory agencies which are involved, particularly in case of the statutory transactions or the statutory audit portion. She has in detail distinguished between the statutory audit and internal audit, where the statutory audit is required for various agencies, including regulators, stakeholders, banks, investors, tax department, whereas internal audit is mainly focused for the management and independent view on the internal control, and there will not be any conflict of interest or the external, not internal. Subsequently, she has also analyzed the SI 120, that is a internal standard on internal audit, where we have to understand and procedural step and mitigation of risk involved, etc. In addition, the detailed role of an internal auditor, what should be covered, how the matter should be handled, how the verification should be done, how the processes should be analyzed, system should be valued, and any deficiencies are there to be verified. And finally, she has particularly thrown a light on three different sectors which she has selected. One is hospitality industries, where there are number of issues like number of patients, huge inventory management, insurance claims. In case of e-commerce sellers, number of different type of issues like discount codes, promotions, aging of inventory, maybe zero aging, then validation of transaction, whether it is a credit card utilization or delivery based requirement or fake parties or fake invoices, etc. Similarly, she has also covered regarding the manufacturing units where costing controls, different procedures, vendor registration, proper vendor registration is required, inventory management, and validation of transaction. She has also emphasized on the sample selection and at the end, but not, it is very important that she says that the internal audit assignments are very remunerative also. So with this, I express thanks to Madam Ruchi Gupta and to all participants for this very good webinar on internal audit and the role of a chartered accountant in handling this. To conclude, I will just mention the role of an auditor for internal audit is now has become a trusted advisor to the management to contribute for the risk management and control enhancement and process improvement. Then transition into leadership role in governance, compliance, and enterprise risk management, and mainly focusing on process assurance, data analyst, and risk management to become an independent internal audit chartered accountancy firm or consulting practices. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chitale sir.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Agarwal sir, is this okay? Shall we conclude?
Yeah, I think we should.
Yes, sir. We may now close the session.